ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Arlen Podcast. I am your host, Eli Detter. I'm so sorry for I know we went like a week without sending anything out, and almost a week and a half without sending anything out. So sorry for that, but we are back, and I have some great stuff to talk with you all today. Today, what I really want to talk about is the Marines, and kind of my career line with that. It's something that I haven't really discussed a whole lot, but I think it would be beneficial. I think it's one of those things that a lot of people know, and yet I feel that a lot of people don't know. It's kind of just one of those things I kind of mention every once in a while. Some people are kind of like, "Oh, what? You're going to the Marines? Like, what? When did that happen?" And I kind of just want to talk about the way I got into that whole career shift. And I just kind of want to detail kind of what all that means for my life and stuff like that, because it's a momentous decision for me to absolutely do a 360 turn from what I was planning on doing to what I am doing now. So without further ado, I'm just going to kind of get into it. And I'm kind of thinking like where to begin. Honestly, I would have to begin last year. Kind of last year when last year around, I'm gonna say maybe March, I was approached by. Actually, let me back up a whole hell of a lot. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Years ago, when I was I might have been middle school age, my mom had a conversation with me about what my future could look like, about possible options for the future. And the things she brought up were, I could go to trade school if I didn't want to go to college, or I could go to college if I got good grades. But then she brought up the military. And the first thing that she talked about was like the Army and the Air Force. And when she's talked about that like piqued my interest. You're like, oh my gosh, Eli, you could become a cook. Not really. I mean, she didn't say it like that, but one of the things that she brought up was being a cook or a chef in the Air Force. And that really piqued my interest. That was like, oh my God, I could become, and it kind of got in my head. I was like, I'm going to become a cook in the Air Force. I'm going to become a cook in the Air Force. And I started, my dad gave me some videos to watch about, Air Force basic training and stuff like that. He started having me memorize like the ranks of the Air Force and stuff like that. And he was like, hey, in a couple of years, you and I can go to the recruiter and we can talk to them about joining the Air Force. And that was kind of like my mantra on him was, for years I was just like, oh, I'm going to join the Air Force, and that's what I'm going to do with my life. And that's why I would tell family and friends, oh, I'm going to join the Air Force and I'm going to become a cook in the Air Force. There's actually a program within the Air Force that's kind of like a hospitality services. It's actually what's called Air Force Services, and it's kind of just like hospitality, taking care of a gym, taking care of a hotel, cooking and stuff like that, or you can become a culinary specialist, and all that stuff was just, I was very interested, and I was like, oh my gosh, it kind of excited me when I thought about it. And as you guys know, this was still this was, dead in the middle when I was still, I was not a great kid at home. I was causing problems at home. I was just, being a passive-aggressive kid. So the fact that my parents were still, like, giving me these opportunities and telling me, hey, Eli, these are the opportunities you can take in your life. These are the kind of the things that you can do. That like, really meant a lot to me, because it means a lot to me now. I don't think I really recognized that when I was a kid, but it means a lot to me now, because even though I was, being abusive to them, they still were trying to figure out what I could do for my future when I wasn't, when all I was focused on was, it was just trying to get back at them and just be mean to them. And they were, helping me figure out my future. So I got to give them, I give them all the credit in the world for the track I'm even on right now. But I kept continuing along. A couple years go by, and all this time I'm working out. I'm working out. I'm doing all this stuff. I joined F3, and I started doing all that stuff, and I started getting bigger. I started getting buffer or whatever, and it did get to the point where I was kind of, my parents were kind of like, Eli, once you turn 18, you can graduate and you can get out of here and you can go to the military. They weren't telling me I had to do that. They were saying that was an option, because I just wasn't being happy at home. I was purposefully just kind of being a dick. I was just kind of being a dick at home. I wasn't being a great person. And it was one of those things that was like, I knew at that point I didn't want, this was probably maybe in like 9th grade, I was like, I don't really want to leave here not knowing if I can come back because of the way I treat these people. I want to be able to come back and be like, hey, I'm here. I want to be able to have a home to return to. And that was the one thing. I think that's the one thing that I realized, that if I hadn't ever changed, my life would look totally different right now, in that manner. But continuing along with the military side of things, specifically. So a couple of years go by, and I'm still on this line of, I'm going to join the Air Force. I actually, in 10th grade, I take the ASVAB. Actually, was it 10th grade or was it 11th grade? I don't remember, actually. But I think it was 10th grade I took the ASVAB the first time. And I got a pretty decent score. I think I got a 73 on it. And that wasn't half bad. Compared to the guy sitting right next to me who got like a 28 on it, I felt pretty good about my my 73 on that. And what happened kind of was, I was talking to lots of recruiters, Army, the Navy. I actually had talked to the Marines once before, and then it was different recruiters then. And then I also talked to the Air Force, and I was really, really invested and honed in on the Air Force specifically, because obviously that was the crew I was planning on going with. And they talked to me, and they I talked to them about how to join and all that stuff, and they were like, well, you're not a junior yet, so we can't really have those type of conversations quite yet. They're kind of like, hey, maybe take the ASVAB again, or maybe, with that score you don't even have to. It would still be valid by the time you entered. And I was like, all right, cool. But what happened is, in junior year, the next year, I did take the ASVAB, and I did succeed in getting a higher score. I think I got a 77 the second time I took it. So obviously, even better score, opened up even more opportunities. But obviously, I was like, well, I know I want Air Force, and I know I want, culinary specialist. I don't even need that high of a score on the ASVAB to get that job. I was like, all right, sick. I had myself set up, and I did it. And then what happened was, around March, I was approached by multiple different recruiters, National Guard, the Army, the Navy, Marines, and Air Force. And I was like, all right, well, obviously I want the Air Force. And I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I'd love to sit down and have a talk. And I actually did end up having a talk with them on a Zoom meeting, because they weren't actually in the office. But I had a talk with them on a Zoom meeting, and we talked a little bit, and then they said, hey, we're going to send you some information in an email and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, it's cool. And I was waiting. I was like, oh, I'm waiting. And I never got the email. And all this time I'm waiting, I was kind of side-eyeing the Marines, just because I was like, the Marines are badass. And that really was what I was thinking. I was like, the Marines are badass, they have cool uniforms. There's like a certain prestige that I feel when people say they're a Marine. I'm like, oh my gosh, I respect this person instantly, So I'm kind of looking at the Marines. My parents were kind of asking, they're like, what's the hang up, why, what's the hang up between the Air Force and the Marines? And I was kind of like, the Air Force is easy, and I feel like I know I would do well in it. I know I would succeed. It's one of those things I can feel God telling me I will. Like, if I choose the Air Force, he's not, like, I'm going to succeed in it. I'll be fine, but I won't be satisfied. And I feel like that's the truth for so many things, is that there's always that easier option, but is it satisfactory? Like, I know for the rest of my life I will never be satisfied unless I take the harder option. Unless I take the more challenging option, I will never be satisfied. I will always be satisfied if I do what's difficult and what's hard. And the honest truth is that what's hard and what is right and what is easy are very rarely the same thing. Usually the stuff that the right option is going to be a difficult one. And that's why you got to do it, But anyways, so I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll reach out to the Marines. The Air Force hasn't really gotten back to me. I kind of reached out to them again, and they never really got back to me. So I was like, all right, I will reach out to the Marines. So I had filled out one of their cards. I called up. I got in a little business card, and I called up Staff Sergeant Thomas Trebetoski. He's actually my recruiter currently. Shout out to you, Staff Sergeant Treb. But I called up Staff Sergeant Trebetoski. I really didn't know who he was at the time. I really just called the number that was. I don't even think I really looked at the name. I just called the number that was on the thing. Actually, no, I looked up. No, I remember. I looked up online what the phone number was, and he just happened to be the one who picked up the phone. And I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, I'm just interested in talking about the Marines and figuring out, how I can join and stuff like that." And he was like, "Awesome," And we talked for quite some time. And then he was like, "All right, how about you come in on Monday or whatever, then we can sit down and talk." And I was like, "Sick." And then he asked for my dad's phone number, and I gave him my dad's phone number. He actually, on that day, he calls up on the same day, maybe 10 minutes later, he calls up my dad, talks to my dad, and pretty much explains, "Hey, I just talked to your son, and he wants to come in. Is that okay with you?" And my dad obviously kind of already knew this because I was standing right there with them. And he was like, "Yeah, cool. Well, we'll come in tomorrow." We went in the next day. This might have been on like a Monday or something like that. So we came in after school, obviously, and we go in to talk. And I walk in, and instantly I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I could tell they're these are like badass people. They're all wearing their uniforms. Inside was just, it looked very like sharp and precise and stuff like that. So I was like instantly impressed, and I was talking with him, and just his manner, how clear he was speaking. He was just trying to tell. I mean, he was telling me just like it is. He was just like, "Hey, here's what's happening. Here's what can happen. Let me know what you think." And he gave me right through this manual. He was like, "Hey, this is kind of all the stuff that the Marines is really about. The Marines is about challenge. The Marines is about pushing yourself past the limits you think you have, and it's about creating new limits." And all this time, I was like shaking my head. I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And my dad had kind of warned me before. He was kind of like, "Hey, a recruiter would do anything to get you to say yes." And I was like, I know. But the whole time, I didn't feel like I was being like sold something, Like, how sometimes you can go into the situation, you're like, they're trying to get me to say yes, right? I didn't feel that. I felt that he genuinely wanted me to say it. Like, he genuinely wanted me to do it, And that was what kind of drove me even more. And when he was like, "Hey, would you want to work out with us this Saturday?" He was like, "Hey, this Saturday, come and work out with us." And I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll work out with you guys." I had no idea what I was getting into. I was just like, I guess I'll work out, sure. So I show up that Saturday, and I work out with them, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is great!" Like, it was very similar to the style of F3. It was a little different. It was more of, "Hey, everybody do this together." So actually, ironically, that first day, I had to work that day, so I wasn't able to go in for the full time. So a lot of the time I was there, I was just kind of standing there cold. This was March, so it was pretty chilly. But I was like, "I'm coming back next week. I got to come back next week. I got to come back again." So I do. I signed some medical release forms, and I get back into it. And I'm kind of looking around the jobs in the Marines. I'm like, what would I do? And I landed on, oh my gosh, they have combat photography, they have media, they have journalism, they have this thing called Comstrat that just kind of encapsulates all those things and puts them in one job. And I'm like, that's what I want to do, man. And I tell him that. He's like, "Awesome, I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind for you." And all this time, I'm kind of like, how did I get here? Like, a year ago, I was not sure what the hell I was doing. I was like, "Oh, I guess I'll go into the Air Force," but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And now I'm, I'm getting set up now. Like, I'm getting set up with, right now I'm set up with the rest of my life. Not entirely, but I'm like, I know I have a job that I can get to. I have a job. I will have stable transportation. I will have a house. I will have food for the rest of my life, essentially. As long as I'm in the Marines, I would have, I'll get fed. I'll get clothes. I'll have money to buy things. I'm like, I'm good, And this whole time, I never once lost sight of the fact that this would be the hardest the hardest physical challenge I'd probably ever go through. Like, I never lost sight of that. And I think what happens often is people will lose sight of that. They'll get so caught up in the moment that they're like, they kind of forget about that. But I never really forgot about it, and I was kind of just like, you know, I was just kind of like, wow, this is awesome, you know. Sorry, 1 second, I'm trying to figure something out right here. All right, sorry, I'm back. And I was kind of just like, wow, you know, this is insane how I've gotten here. And my family were, my parents, I think my family, I'm assuming my parents were proud of me for kind of doing it. But I was so happy. I was so satisfied with the fact that I'd found something like this. And I'd met friends. I made friends within the group. There were people that I didn't even know that, you know, they went to my school and they were part of the Marine program. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, my one friend, Ian Hoke, was part of it. And you know, he's in the pool. And it was just so great. It was so awesome, you know. Yeah. And then, so I wasn't able to swear in until, it was actually so I went to the MEPS, which is the Military Entrancing Processing Station up in Harrisburg. I went to MEPS towards the end of the school year. It was April. It was the beginning of April. Not towards the end of the school year. It was the beginning of April. I went to MEPS. It was really fun. Yeah, it was actually... It might not have been the beginning of April. I went sometime in April or May. I don't actually remember the day, what time I went. But I went in April. I got out of school earlier. I had a packed bag for a day, you know, like an overnight bag. And I had it packed and I was ready. And it was a pretty long process. Just the whole, I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork before I went. And we drove up there. And then, I mean, obviously, once we got to the hotel, we calmed down. You know, we got to the hotel and we were just able to sit down and relax, lay down and relax. Actually, me and the dude who was in my hotel room with me, we went and we worked out. I told him, I was like, hey, you know, let's go get a workout in. You know, we might be off. You know, we don't have to do anything, but I'm like, hey, might as well get a workout in. So we went down to the little gym they had. We hit the treadmill. We hit some weights. We worked out a little bit. We could have swam in the pool, but I didn't have my swimwear with me. And then we got, you know, there was free food at the hotel, so we got free food at the hotel and at surrounding restaurants. So that was awesome. And then it was a great experience. I met so many people, you know. That next morning we woke up, I got breakfast, and I met, you know, 50 other people that were, you know, join the Marines or join the Marines, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, all sorts of different people, Army National Guard, all sorts of different people. And I've made friends with a lot of them. Especially a lot of the Marines. We made a promise to kind of stay in contact with each other, and it's kind of awesome just to kind of see their growth. And you know, when they go off to boot camp, then they come back 13 weeks later, and it's amazing to see their transition. It also kind of terrifies me because they come back and they look like absolute beasts of people. You know, they got the shaved head, they're buff as hell. They got, you know, They just look badass when they come back, and it's great. And I hope that I look badass when I come back, and I don't get like super skinny or whatever. But it's so great to see them come back, and they're, you know, and they have a different mentality, they have a different mindset, and it's so great. It really is. But the main thing about this, and kind of the idea of this whole thing here, what I'm talking about here is, it's crazy what can happen in a year. You know, a year ago, I would never have been sitting here saying, I'm joining the Marines. I'm going to graduate early and I'm going to join the Marines. I mean, when I say that to people, everyone has like that same almost thought of like, the Marines are badass, you know? You say, hey, I tell people I'm joining the Marines, they kind of raise their eyebrows like, oh, wow. And it's interesting, you know, it's that thing that seems so, it seems impossible to say, oh, I'm joining the Marines. It really does. When people are like, oh, you're joining the Marines, they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I'm joining the Marines. It's not that crazy of me, right? I'm like, I'm not crazy for doing this. I hope not. But I don't think I am. I think it's just people have that perception of the Marines being badass, and they are. They really are. The Marines are badass, and I'm happy to be I'm happy that I can join them. I'm happy that I really do hope that in 6 months I'm coming back or 6 or 7 months, whenever I'm finished, I'm coming back on this podcast and I'm telling you guys the Phantom Phoenix is now a United States Marine. I really hope I can say that. And I know I will be able to. I believe I have the mental toughness. I believe I have the skill. I have the strength for it. Everyone's been telling me, hey, the Marines it's 90% mental, 10% physical. The physical part of it sucks, but 10%, but it's only 10% of it. It's mostly mental. You just gotta be smart. You gotta trust the people on your left and to your right, in front and behind you, and trust that they're not gonna lead you into the path of danger. That they're gonna lead you out of danger, and that you're gonna be able to take out the danger. You're gonna be able to get rid of the danger. You gotta fight so other people can have freedom. That's the big thing. You gotta be able to be willing to fight so other people can have freedom. That's what the armed forces is all about, protecting our citizens and stuff like that. And that's something I really hope I can do, whether it's just with my photography or whatever. If I end up switching my career in that. But I really do think that God opened this path. The Marines, that was a path that God opened. He wanted me to take that. He needed me to take it. And he offered it up to me and was like, hey, you don't have to take this. I kind of felt like that he was like, you don't have to take this fully. If you join the Marines, you will be taken care of. You will not, you're not going to fail. You're going to be fine if you join the Air Force, but you won't be satisfied with your life. And I knew he was right. That I will only ever be satisfied in my life if I take the harder choice. If I make the hard choice. If I make the hard option. And it's funny that some people are like, dude, you make this stuff look easy. When I'm working out in the gym and I'm like lifting a pretty heavy weight, people are like, Eli, you make this look easy. I'm like, do I really? And they're like, yeah, you make this look easy. I'm like, it's not every day. It is a struggle to get up and get going. It really is, and you might not believe me because I don't really ever look like I'm struggling, but it is a struggle. It is a everyday struggle to get out of bed when I don't feel like it. And that's what discipline is. It's getting out of bed when you don't feel like it. It's making the tough option when no one else will. That's the I recently was made the guide of the recruiting station, and that kind of just means I've set the example. I lead the pack, And then I explained it to my dad, and I was like, in one sentence, here's what I basically do. I do what other people don't want to do. I do what no one else is willing to. If no one else is willing to lift the extra weight, you best believe I'm going to be over there hoisting up that extra weight and carrying it on my back. That's what I'm going to do, and that's what I try and do in life. If someone doesn't feel like holding up that extra weight, you best believe I'm going to walk over and I'm going to say, I will help you. Give me some weight. I'm not asking them if they need help. I'm going to say, I'm going to help you. Me joining the Marines is less. It's significantly less. It's almost not at all about what the Marines itself means. It's about how it represents me. I always say, do what represents who you are, and I really hope that's what I'm doing with the Marines. Is I'm entering a force that is all about helping your brother in need when they need that, picking them up and carrying them out of the line of fire. And that's what I plan to do in my life, with the people I love. That's what I plan to do with the Marines and stuff like that. And I'm happy I was able to sit down and talk to you all about it. It's something I haven't really talked a whole lot about it, and yet it's kind of something everybody knows about me, is that I'm doing these in the Marines, but I really wanted to just really talk about it. And if you guys ever have any if you guys ever have any kind of questions about joining the military, joining the Marines, honestly, I'm going to tell you to just look up your nearest recruiting station and talk to them, because they have all that information for you. I'm going to vouch for the Marines. Join the Marines, man. Challenge yourself. Go for the harder option. It's truly a it's gonna be, if you want a challenge, join the Marines. If you want a challenge, join the Marines. If you want something easy, fine, don't join the Marines. But honestly, I'm gonna tell you, join the Marines. It's fun. It's difficult as hell. It's gonna suck, but it's gonna be fun. So that's kind of all I had for you guys today. Really just kind of keep an eye on this stuff in your life. Don't let your life pass you by without you taking advantage of it. When God opens up a door for you, don't let it close without you walking through the doorway. You know, I want you guys to take advantage of every every opportunity you're given, every chance you're given to grow yourself, to grow your mindset, to grow the people in your life, to have better friends, to have a better life, whatever. I want you guys to take every opportunity you get. Okay. And I promise you, in 8 months or whatever, I'm coming back on this podcast, and I will be able to say this sentence: the Phantom Phoenix is now a United States Marines. Have a good day, everybody. I love you all. Thank you. Peace out.